Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Energy Speaks Back, powered by Hark. My name's Paul Webb. I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm also your host. And weekly, I present to you experts from around the world. And today, we are in Germany. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. And before we get into our interview today, I would like to just recognise our sponsors and supporters of this podcast. And they are Clean Energy Revolution for their knowledge and networking within the renewable world, B2B Energy for their 11-week energy program, Hark Systems, renowned for their energy software, EcoSync for their heating solutions around the radiator control, Alexis Energy for power management, Led by Vision, who are LED and control specialist, Watts for their electronics and EV transition program, Carbon Black Global for their waste to energy initiatives, and lastly, our certificate partners, Esther Energy. Welcome to episode 58 of Energy Speaks Back, powered by Hark. My special guest today has some valuable insights that he has brought to the industry regarding his degree he studied within the sustainability criteria. Our expert today also works as a strategic renewable energy expert for Schneider Electric and has become my friend over the last couple of years regarding our communications through LinkedIn and our posts. So without any further ado, I give you Miguel Mast. Good morning, Miguel. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And it's really great to see you. I think we've been friends for over 12 months now through LinkedIn and our social media. We have some great banter with each other, but never ever met you in person. I'm sure that day will come. And you're made up of many different cultures, and we're going to sort of touch on that shortly. But give us some background to yourself today.
Okay, so take up half the podcast probably. So
I've got the timer going,
mixture.
Miguel. So
okay, people tune out as soon as I start. I'm a mixture of different things. So I currently live in Germany, and part of me identifies as German for sure. Another part would identify as maybe Catalan or maybe Welsh. I spend a lot of time in the States. So I went to school in the States. I went to university in the UK. I've worked across the world in different places. So my parents are different nationalities. So a bit of a mixture. But one way of looking at it maybe is if I would be following like a World Cup in football, I support the Spanish national team.
Right.
In terms of club football, I'd support the Frankfurt football team, which is just down the road from where I am, or the Barcelona football team, which is where I was born. So good old mixture. It depends on the topic.
that is absolutely amazing. And, you know, I'm a great follower of football. I'm an East End boy supporting West Ham, and I follow England, obviously. And as you say, we could probably create another podcast just talking about football alone. Welsh, are you a rugby follower as well?
Not really. I'll watch it when it's on. I've got some great memories of watching World Cups with my grandparents sitting in Wales, but it's not as on my radar as football would be. But I would support Wales if I'm watching rugby.
Now, I think your culture and your sort of background really does help you with your energy industry knowledge, because for me, you cover a wide spectrum of energy knowledge as well. And, you know, we're both part of a global networking group, which is the Clean Energy Revolution, which we communicate on a regular basis. And you're part of the lead team of that. So, yes, tell us about your energy background and where's that all started? Where's that come from?
Sure. It's a good question. I would say it probably started when I was in high school in New Jersey in the United States, where I had a physics teacher who used to work at the Princeton Fusion Lab, and was super keen on nuclear fusion, and had us run a project for the whole year. I mean, this is high school physics, where usually this doesn't work this way. And it wasn't like A-level physics either. It was, just physics. And he had us run a project over the course of the year where we would split into little groups and focus on specific aspects of the power plant as our focus area. And I was on the thermodynamics team. So thinking about, okay, how do you move the heat around, and sort of water as that energy carrier. And I had a great time. It was really fun and interesting to do that. And I was quite passionate about it. Then with finishing high school, and then I moved, or my family moved to Germany after I finished high school, sort of fizzled out, didn't really know where I was going. But the long and short of it is that I ended up at the University of Exeter in their Cornwall campus studying renewable energy engineering, which then was many years focusing on all sorts of different forms of renewables that there are or were at the time, different routes you can go. Some of them back then were very much early days and at the forefront, but being down in Cornwall, for example, there's quite a lot of research into wave energy, which is still not really a large-scale established source of renewable electricity, but interesting and has a lot of potential. So quite a bit of work in that area. And then as a part of that degree, one of the big topics that the university had us do was to have semi-mandatory industrial internships whenever there was a summer break, so that you never have a break. But it meant that we would get out into industry in the summer months and get to know some area that has to do with energy, broadly speaking. Obviously a focus on renewable energy. But I actually did an internship at the, I'm going to try and translate this. It's the Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, which is sort of a development aid branch, government funded, tax funded German institution, which goes out into the world and does sort of development aid for all sorts of different things. From social aspects to forests sort of aspects to energy. And so there I did an internship in Jordan, helping on a project which was looking at using solar thermal heat to power an absorption chiller, which would provide air conditioning for different things. There was 4 pilot projects, and I was more focused on a hotel. So basically, it's really hot in Jordan. Use that heat to power an absorption chiller with hot water. And then that has this basically creates cold water from hot water. And then they use that in their air conditioning system. So that was then sort of a more tangible start into my energy journey, if you want to call it that. And there I also was going into a direction of financial analysis and business case work on, okay, this is a pilot project. The point of the project is not to make any money. It was sort of to build up local know-how and have local companies be able to do this themselves in the future without the GIZ, this big German name of the institution, being there and supporting it. So my role was kind of to focus on what would need to happen, what are all the moving parts of the business case, and what would need to change for this project to be a good business decision, not just a good environmental decision. And that was sort of the seed of what I've been doing ever since, which is really passionate about energy, really passionate about sustainability and what we can do there, but sort of recognizing the fact that if we want to roll this out at scale, which is what we need to be doing, then you need to be able to present to people who are less passionate about the sustainability piece, very passionate about money. You need to be able to present to them, why is this a good idea in your world? And so from then on out, my focus was always on finding the business case or presenting what needs to change in order for there to be a business case. So, that internship turned into my thesis from my bachelor, which was sort of focusing on how can a hotel market the fact that they're doing sustainability and therefore get more customers? And that funds the project, even if the sort of standalone economics of the project don't fund themselves, or would be kind of a premium thing to do, a premium way to operate an air conditioning system. But if even one extra guest, when looking at 2 hotels in the region, chooses that hotel instead of the one that doesn't have the sustainability project, then totally worth it. Definitely do the project. And so that was the sort of spin on that approach.
And did you come up with tangible figures? Yeah. Did you have tangible figures?
I did. Yeah. Thankfully, I was. It was all under NDA, so I couldn't publish it in any way other than for my university to give it a grade, and for the project. So basically the funders, the GIZ, for them to see the results, because it was like I had real data on the costs of all the components of, the hotel data on where is the business case, so it could get really, really specific, and then had hotel data to say how many guests do they have in general, what's the average value of an additional guest, and then have that as a factor in my financial analysis as well. So yes, I was very lucky to have real data.
Wow. Because as an energy consultant, I talk about that. I talk about all the benefits that can provide an organization. And we do touch on the green, amongst their peers and amongst their competitors, but there's nothing ever tangible out there to prove it. And if there is that data, and is that data available to share with other people within the within the industries now?
Unfortunately not.
Right.
It was a big discussion back then for me to even be able to present it to my course mates, or a wider group of staff. It had to be, I think it was 2 professors only could be in the room and no other audience, and because it was sort of quite sensitive information in it. So not in terms of the raw data, but conceptually, yes, it's something I like talking about. I was just talking about it yesterday to my current manager, about that sort of approach of looking beyond the sort of immediate facts of the situation to say, what are these intangible benefits, and can we put a value on those? And then, you're really amplifying the potential of what you're doing, as I'm sure, you do on a daily basis. So in this sense, from putting a value on that, the data there was hotel guests, and was sort of the average profit that an extra hotel guest brings the hotel. So, what are all the costs, and what's the average price of a room over the year? And then sort of breaking that down into, okay, on average, this is my extra that I put in the positive side of my business case. And then I sort of flex, well, how many extra guests would you have to get in order for that to flip the business case of the whole sustainability project? So, I think that's what needs to be done in many cases, is to convince a hotel manager or, a plant manager of some sort, a facility manager, to say, can I get this across the finish line? Maybe they want to, but their hands are tied because they have to find a business case and then get them to do that. Having said that, I've subsequently, in other stations of my life, had conversations with hotels again, trying to position sustainability projects, trying to give it that angle. It hasn't worked. So, you know how it is. It's brutal sometimes, but it's worth a shot.
The priority has got to be the payback, as it with everything. It goes payback, and then, what you're introducing here, and, the green issues of trying to save the planet doesn't always wash, does it? It's all about money at the end of the day. And that's what we're driving. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, we're going through this.
That's exactly it.
We're going through this, the energy crisis, which, in one side of it, we're seeing organizations' energy increase. I don't know whether Germany's the same. We're seeing increases in the UK of 250%. That's a driver as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a really interesting moment in time, because I'm sure we're not the only ones that have in the past said, this is a great project for the planet. However, until, I don't know, the gas price gets this high, it will not have that payback that you need. And now it's that moment where knock, knock, knock. Hey, the gas prices where we said it needed to be a year ago, 2 years ago, when we looked at that project, now's the time, because this may happen again, or maybe it's likely even that it'll happen again, that we have such a huge market movement. So yeah, absolutely, it's exciting, and I think the arena for efficiency and on-site generation and renewable energy in general is even more attractive now than it ever has been, especially from that financial angle, which is the enabler of a lot of what needs to happen, is get that double win of, okay, sustainability is great, everyone likes sustainability, but as soon as you attach premium and cost to that word, the interest sort of fizzles out. But if you can say sustainability and also savings or immediate benefits, then you start to get the attention that you need in order to scale at the speed that we need to be scaling to avoid catastrophic global warming.
What do you think your day-to-day challenges are with organizations when you're sitting down with them?
I think the exciting thing, some might call it a challenge, is it's a lot of hand-holding to get them to the point where they actually do implement a project. And it takes a lot of time. You need to be patient, and you need to, I think, enjoy explaining things and enjoy sort of being that patient mentor, teacher, person. Because very often I speak to people that have maybe outdated views of renewable electricity, and they say, oh, it's really expensive and it's unreliable and it's not going to work. My factories can't run on renewable electricity. And, you know, their heart's in the right place. They're trying to sort of take care of their core business, right? But they need a sort of software update of, you know, the world has changed. That's not necessarily the case. Here's a couple things that you can do, and therefore it can actually be a win-win for you as well. That's a couple conversations, shall I say. I was going to say months. It could be longer than that. Yeah. It's sort of, I see my role of being a lot of, well, should I even seriously consider renewable electricity for my business? And then, okay, they may say eventually, yes, I'll seriously consider it. And even then, once they've seriously considered it, it's a long journey until they actually implement different solutions, you know, whether that's switching their electricity provider or getting a sort of green supply agreement. That would be a low-hanging fruit, but that's not available in every country in the world. No. So then the other things start to get a bit more complicated, and therefore it just takes a long time to explain through the nuances of the different choices that they may have, the pros and cons of all of those, until they would actually ever get to a point where they say, right, okay, I'll sign a contract and I'll switch to that method of buying renewable electricity. So I think, to summarize it, my day-to-day is explaining a lot. Even though, you know, on paper, I'm a salesperson, I don't really see myself as a salesperson. I see myself as an explainer of renewable electricity and the different things that are out there for companies, because I don't work at a company which sells the end product. I help companies get to the end product and buy that from the best providers of that end product. So my role is really sort of hand-holding and stakeholder education. And I find that really gratifying. You know, some part of me wants to be a teacher when I was in school, and here I am, kind of a teacher, you know.
Exactly. That's what we are. And, you know, one of my earlier podcasts was one of my close friends who's a sales specialist, and I wanted to bring him in because we have to sell every day. And, you know, I worked for the same company as yourself many, many years ago, and it wasn't called Schneider in them days. It was called Satchel Controls. And we didn't like to be called salespeople. We were either technical salespeople or business development people. And that is where business development was a softer way of selling, because we was advising and helping and developing the need for them to, in my days, we were installing BMS systems. But now, obviously, it's evolved. Organizations like yourself has evolved regarding BMS and energy management systems that needs to be implemented.
And I would maybe add to that I think, especially in that sort of sustainability space, if you want to use a sort of broad, vague term for the industry that we work in, a lot of what we do is being a sort of trusted advisor and being someone that they can come to and say, Paul, I've heard about this. Is it really a thing, or is it sort of far out and not there yet? Can it be done? Can it not be done? Has it been done yet? And they're just asking someone that they trust, who is knowledgeable in that topic area, to help them understand. And if you are trusted and you explain and you help them, then I think the sale will happen. That will fall into place if it is something valuable that person wants. The role that I see us having generally in the industry is people are spooked and sort of afraid and not sure if it's really all the case with sustainability. Just keep it broad, whether that's EVs or renewable electricity. Where's the catch? I shouldn't trust this. It's sort of the whole cognitive dissonance thing. I'd rather not believe that it's good and it's more comfortable for me. And so we need to be trusted before they even open the door of seriously considering doing anything. And I think that's sort of in quite stark contrast to, a couple of years ago, I went through a phase where I was sort of reading sales books or doing like sales trainings and things like that, and really valuable and interesting. But I find a lot of it is focused on get the sale, like selling a car. It's not like a long-term relationship, like you may have tricks of getting someone to sign something, but what we're doing is getting them to change fundamentally the way that their business works. And that's going to be a long-term thing. And you don't want to be tricking people into things that aren't a good idea for their business. So most of that stuff I find is sort of interesting, more from a consumer side, how often you get tricked into short-term decisions where it's not like, it's just, okay, I bought a packet of crisps. Did I really want that? I don't know why I bought it. It was just there and it was saying the right things and I fell for it, that point of view. But in the business we're in, I don't see us as salespeople. I see us as trusted advisors that just help them understand what's out there. What are the implications for them of choosing different things or maybe putting together different choices together into a portfolio of some sort. And then it's sort of up to them to keep asking questions and building their understanding until they're ready and they think this is a good idea for my business. And then the choice of, okay, well, now I need to buy this equipment or I need to sort of contract for this service, that will happen naturally, as long as they've had the time and the trusted advice to get to a point where they feel like that's the right thing for them to do as a business.
Going back to the sales thing, I've done the courses and listened to all the tapes and things, but it's helping people make the decision and asking for the order, because we need to help people to get to the right place regarding that. And I totally agree with you. I've been in so many meetings where the client has heard a pitch about CHP, about solar, about, procuring his energy for the next 5 years, for instance. They always look to me and say, Paul, is this the right thing to do? And, if you can come back to them with the honest answer. And I have this saying where I only deal in facts and the facts are X, Y, Z, and we need to be there as that advisor and the trust. And I'm a great believer of like and trust and developing that with an organization as well.
Absolutely.
I want to go on about so each organization is different. And as a business development and trainer of, helping these organizations making the right decision, you must have so many different things in your back pocket that you can be talking to these organizations. How do you know when to get that right thing out in front of them?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to different types of roles in an organization. So whether that's someone that's focused on buying energy, buying maybe just electricity, buying that at a national level or at a plant level or at a geographical level or at a global level, those will all have different ways of working. And they're basically like you and I, they have KPIs of how do they get measured or evaluated as being a good worker or a bad worker. And so it's more about understanding how can we do whatever we need to do to help you do what is right for your role and ultimately for your business. So it's just about understanding what is it that you need in order to say at the end of a year or at the end of your career, I did something which was good for our business. And that's sort of, I see this as a bit, it's like a translation exercise. And maybe that's that multicultural lingual background that you mentioned being relevant. But I see a lot of work happens in translating the language, and I know you have a favorite phrase on this, but translating the language of accountants into the field of renewable electricity and vice versa, translating renewable electricity into a language that an accountant will understand, because they need to put that into context of, well, what does this mean for my KPIs? You know, I need to get the books in order. How is this going to impact that? They need to understand that before they give the sign off to, okay, well, off you go and sort out that renewable energy project. I've sort of given my seal of approval. This is okay for me, for my KPIs in my language. When you talk to a procurement person, they'll have a totally different language, and they'll be thinking about different things and different factors and things that they think are the most important when considering a power purchase agreement, for example. And the finance people will have different drivers again. The legal people, of course, will have different drivers, and all these different departments across an organization have different worlds that they live in. And what you're trying to do is sort of say, take all of their feedback and their languages and translate it, and then get everyone to sort of a cohesive sort of trade-off bubble of saying, okay, well, you can't have all of that, but you can have most of it in exchange for this person not losing all of the things that are important to them, but also having a fair share of pros and cons for their KPIs and their their department's focus area, which may be long-term savings in energy procurement, or maybe is this an attractive price of electricity? Whereas the accountants will think, you know, is this a lease or is it a derivative? Or how, you know, once you go into that, how does that affect our business? Because sometimes if you're rolling out these programs at scale, it's a bit like heart surgery for a business. You're sort of at the core of so many different things that come together, and don't mess that up, because their business, and that's for us to remember and understand, their business isn't renewable energy. Their business is making cars or making paper or making things or providing services. And that needs to all stay healthy and well. Otherwise, there's no point in them having a renewable project if they can't, operate as a business. So sort of circling back to your question, I think it's different stakeholders will have different things that they're concerned about, and it's being able to address those concerns and talk them through it and hear them out and say, yes, that is a really important point that needs to be carefully considered. Here's the different things that you may have not yet had on your radar that add to that list of potential issues. But maybe there's ways that we can get to a trade-off where we've sort of alleviated most of those concerns in exchange for getting you other benefits of becoming more sustainable, growing your business, having a better conscience, being able to hire more talent because they want to work for sustainable companies, and so on. Keeping clients, which in the mid-short term will have very specific requirements of your sustainability or your footprint per product that you sell them. So it's just being open and understanding that people come from different backgrounds. They come from different motivations. They have different motivations, and they need to understand what you're saying in their world.
I like the way you keep bringing it back to the brand, about how, the brand being sustainable. And I think that's really key. Um, I do struggle with that at the moment, but I think that is evolving. We've got COP 26 going on at the moment. And I think that's going to make a big, it's about messaging and understanding. And I think these organizations are going to start leading down this path. We've got no choice really, but these organizations do need to embrace that. And that does need to become part of the payback, saving the money on kilowatt hours, reducing the emissions and improving their brand and obviously their bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing that adds to that is sometimes if a company is trying to try and keep this general, reposition themselves as selling a sustainable project, then all eyes are on them of like, really, is it really sustainable? What have you really done? What's the real impact?
What's the facts?
Show me. And so everyone's kind of going that way. But if you want to go that way, you need to be sure that what you're doing really is more sustainable, because they're going to come and they're going to ask those questions, whether that's internal or external stakeholders or NGOs. Someone's going to question you if you're trying to sell more product because of a label of sustainability. You better be doing it right, because otherwise it's going to bite you where it hurts. So, yeah, I think the value absolutely is there, and there's a lot you can do which is right and which is great and is more sustainable. And then when you talk about it and sell more products, fantastic. It's a win-win for everyone. You can buy more things feeling less guilty as a consumer, because you feel like, well, I'm supporting a good cause and also getting the product that I like, as opposed to getting the product that I like and not supporting a good cause. Great. I think we have reached that point where a broad mass of consumers is taking sustainability into account in their daily lives. And I think daily lives is great, but where I see the impact being more powerful is when you need to make big decisions, long-term decisions, investments, procurements of a different kind of magnitude, whether that's at the personal level or at the business level. Then there, I think the dynamic has shifted to say, I'm putting big money behind this, and it's a long-term thing that I'm investing in. Do I really want to put big money and a long-term commitment into something which isn't sustainable? Probably not, because it's now a long-term big value topic, right? So daily life, short-term procurements, I think it's there, and people are like, the trend of being able to see the carbon footprint of a product in the supermarket, that's sort of that aspect. And the other is like, I don't know, if you're trying to buy a car, you're like, okay, that's a big procurement in my life, and maybe the biggest one in my life so far. I think there's more and more people that are now like, do I want to put so much, like for me personally, that's so much of my purchasing power being allocated to one decision. It should also be for the right cause, right? And I think not a long time ago, maybe a year, maybe two, that would have been outlandish to think that that's the reality. I think more and more it is becoming the reality as more people are more aware from an earlier age of the impact of not making sustainable decisions. So, coming back to the point of where that seed was planted of the business case, that's making investors look up. They're putting big money behind more sustainable companies that they want to have in their portfolio. And that's making big brands look up and say, this is now of strategic importance, not just a nice to have. It is a core part of our strategy that we need to become really more sustainable and not just appear more sustainable. So, I think it's great.
Miguel, you've got, I think I'm going to sort of not answer for you, but you've got a great cause. I know, looking at those pictures behind you, you've got young children, obviously. Do you think about their future?
Yes, absolutely. And I can tell you there was a very specific moment in my life where I was sat on a bench in a park in Lithuania, and I had this moment of realization that this is a beautiful day, the temperature is just right, the trees are all green, I'm breathing clean air. And I thought, will they, my kids at the time, I don't know, maybe they were like 1 or 2 years old. Will they be able to sit on this bench at my age and feel the same? And I did have a feeling of sort of like getting goosebumps just thinking about it now.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think there will still be days like that, of course. It's not that big of a time jump, fortunately, between their age and my age, but it will be less likely that they could sit there and feel all of those positive things that I was feeling. They may say, some of those things, yes, but I can't believe that my dad was sat here all those years ago and he had clean and fresh and green and the right temperature, and he didn't have to worry about the water being turned off and things like that, So absolutely. And since then, I think it was last summer here in, half an hour outside of Frankfurt in Germany, super well-off country by any standard across the world. We have very little to worry about here that most of the world's population is already worrying about. But they had sort of water rationing to say, you can't do this and you can't do that after a certain time. And in a country where it does rain a lot here, it's maybe not at the Welsh level, but it's not a country you would associate with droughts to the level that you have to worry about water. And that's at a very, very small scale compared to the rest of the world worrying about water. But still, it was like a really hard-hitting fact of this didn't happen here in the past, that you'd get sort of restrictions on water consumption. And at the same time, when we moved here, I live, thankfully, very close to a big forest, sort of a natural reserve. There was just like huge amounts of logging going on, cutting down trees that had been sort of attacked by these insects, which are sort of a consequence of multiple years of droughts in the summers being too dry. And so it's like really hard-hitting facts that are hitting me, where, even at an age where I was conscious of climate change being a thing, I didn't really expect it to be so real so quickly. And then you add another generation to that. It's scary. And it's hard sometimes to feel positive. You mentioned COP when it started, or the G20 right before it. I was quite disillusioned and disappointed with the lack of real, tangible, brave action items. Because everyone really needs to get together and agree on something now that actually needs to happen. Otherwise, it's going to be our kids and our grandkids are not going to see the world like we've been blessed to experience it to date.
There's an amazing story about the bench. You must document it, because it's a beautiful story. And I think if you was to show that to your children when they get older, they'd always remember that story, that, and look at the differences between, then and now, and
yeah.
I'm 57. I wished I had sat down on a bench many, many years ago and had that thought. We didn't have them thoughts then. And if you imagine, that's 20 odd years have gone past where we could have probably had more of a change and implemented a change. And now I honestly believe we're leaving it too late. We can't really do a lot about climate change. We can slow it down now. Where we can stop it, I'm not sure. But we can do what we can to slow everything down. Nature has started, really. But look, that's for the future. We've got our job to do now. So, Miguel, it's this time in the podcast where I like to put you've been on the spot all the time and you've been absolutely amazing, but I'd like to put you on the spot even further now and just ask you, is there something you can give back to our industry today as a takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty that all of us should be giving back, and a lot of different areas that you could be doing that in. The one I find myself quite passionate about is helping the next generation to get into the positions that they need to out of school or out of uni or moving places and moving countries, but get from where they are to where they need to be to start making bigger impacts. And I find, looking back at my time going through university, trying to find those internships that we talked about earlier on, and getting into those industrial placements. And then after university, getting into jobs where we can use all of that knowledge and all of that passion that we have to start making a real difference, and to get into positions where you have the trust and the remit and the space to blossom and get all that creativity and that passion and that hard work to start helping the world. And that's sort of a challenge that I really felt, and my cohort felt, and my colleagues graduating with me, to get into those places, because it's really about the network that you have. And at that early stage, it's something that has often been neglected, you don't know where to start. How can you network? How can you be brave enough to put yourself out there on LinkedIn when you haven't graduated uni yet? What are you going to say? What are you going to talk about? Just a student. And it's sort of getting that age people to realize how great they really are, and to start making the connections across the industry, which I think is the really great part about the Clean Energy Revolution group, is a lot of that connecting people. And it's just, some of it's luck, and then some of it's just being in the right place at the right time, in the right conversation, and knowing people who maybe know people, and all those 6 degrees of separation. But I try to, via the Clean Energy Revolution and via quite close contacts I still have with the professors at the university I went to, provide, and whenever I see things that cross my desk or on my radar of openings that are that, get them there to the people and get them distributed and post. So I just posted one, I think yesterday, in the Clean Energy Revolution group. Yeah. I regularly have exchanges with my professors to say, look, this one or that one. Happy to talk to people, happy to be sort of the mentor that I wished I would have had at that stage of my journey. Not someone which is already like super experienced and maybe is potentially lost touch with the realities of that no man's land between education and work, but something where it still feels quite raw to me. We're coming up to quite a few years since that time, but it's raw enough for me that I can relate, and I can I still remember how it was. And so I try to help people in that sense. That's how I try to give back, is to get people into the places they need to be, because they're the next generation that is going to make really big, impactful decisions that need to happen for us to sort of minimize man-made climate change, to your point of being unavoidable to an extent. I think that's where I see myself passionate of sending the elevator back down from, it's not like it's very high yet, but that,
it's high enough.
Helping
it's high enough.
And people there.
And you've done some really great work with me with the Clean Energy Revolution Juniors, which are formed of the graduates and the students. And there's some amazing talent amongst that group.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's just giving them that little bit extra support that, you wish you'd had. And I definitely wished I had along the way.
Absolutely.
Miguel, you've been absolutely brilliant. Awesome talking to you and listening to your story. I apologize now that the audience won't notice, but we was going on and off with the broadband connection. But we, appreciate your patience and your determination to get your story over to us today. So, Miguel, thank you very much. It's really great to see you. And lastly, I'd like to say, thank you so much
for having me.
Thank you. And lastly, I would like to say, you and your family, please be safe in these times.
You too. Take care. Great to see you.